Welcome back to the channel. We're glad you could join us. If you missed our first episode, there will be a link down in the description and on screen at the end of this video. I'm your host, Donald Key, and this is Wasteland Watch News. We really appreciate you taking the time to check out this video, and if you want to show your support for the channel, then you can do that by leaving a like, comment, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. In the run-up to the patch 22.1 Wasteland update to the overall gameplay experience of Fallout 76, there was much debate in the community over the calculations for damage buffs being changed from multiplicative to additive, and the consequences of that change to your character's overall damage output. Put simply, this change means that all additional damage from legendary weapon effects and perk cards is now significantly reduced. Combined with enemies now being scaled based on your level, players are finding that some enemy types can be much tougher to take down. Bethesda's reasoning for these changes was to provide a more predictable experience, whatever that means. Let's be honest, it's Fallout 76 we're talking about after all. Predictable is not a word best used to describe the interesting things that can often happen while wandering around Appalachia. The One Wasteland Patch 22 update back in September brought a comprehensive rebalancing to player damage output and enemy level scaling in order to provide a more consistent experience for players regardless of level, without the same extreme difficulty spikes newer players would often find when venturing beyond the early game areas of the map. The primary focus, going by Bethesda's marketing of the changes, was to allow players of different levels to play together and both enjoy a challenging experience. This led to concerns among the veteran player community about the possibility of feeling severely underpowered by the updated enemy level scaling and changes to damage calculation. In fairness, with some players having spent a significant amount of time collecting weapons, armor, and tweaking perk card loadouts to find the build that suits their playstyle, these high-level players were somewhat justified in their concern. There was a strong feeling in the veteran community that the balance change was heavily weighted in favor of newer players, especially relevant on the Xbox as newer players are likely just starting out since Fallout 76 came to Xbox Game Pass. This has even birthed a new insult for noobs in Xbox social media forums: Game Passers. However, a common complaint about Fallout 76 is that once you reach the endgame, acquire some top-tier weapons and armor, it was overall too easy and lacking in content. Unfortunately, Bethesda's response in trying to address some of the balance issues seems to be consistently reducing player damage output in ways that primarily affect newer players, thereby making the game more difficult, but not necessarily for the people who are asking for more of a challenge in the first place. Bethesda have addressed complaints that the mid-game was unnecessarily difficult for newer players as a result of the enemy level scaling by adjusting the max level that enemies can spawn for players under level 50. Balance changes to live service games are always controversial, with developers trying to keep things interesting for veteran players while also not alienating potential new players. Despite the overwhelmingly negative feedback that Bethesda has faced since the launch of Fallout 76, they do deserve some credit for at least standing behind the game and continuing to try and improve the experience for both veterans and new players alike. Here at Wasteland Watch News, we're hopefully going to be answering a question about one of the recent changes in the Patch 23 update, that being the double damage from the Instigating legendary effect now only applying to the weapon's base damage number before any other damage buffs are applied. Is Instigating still viable, or has this recent damage nerf made it yet another throwaway legendary effect? I'm here at the Whitespring to test the Instigating effect with a stealth-focused build to find out. So, for any Game Pass, newer players still learning the legendary prefixes and effects, the Instigating legendary effect causes double damage when your target is at full health. Now that means its most effective use is to do the most damage you can on your first shot, because as soon as your target has taken 1 hit point of damage, the effect no longer works. Well, in theory, but in practice it's still up in the air. More about that in a moment. I'm using a primed 25% faster fire rate Instigating Handmade, with the third legendary effect being 90% reduced weight, which will have no impact on damage. While 25% faster fire rate obviously does not have any direct impact on base damage, more rounds fired in quicker succession does provide for improved DPS. The Instigating legendary effect is ideal for a stealthy playstyle since it relies on sneak attacks to get the most damage from the initial shot. When paired with Covert Operative, you can easily take off more than 50% of the target's health, which is exactly what we'll be aiming for, to take out some ghouls quietly one at a time, hopefully without being detected. I'm not going to go through every perk card in detail, but instead give a brief overview of what we're going to call the efficient sneak build. The legendary perk cards that were introduced in patch 23 have allowed high-level players a lot more versatility in how you allocate your special stats if you choose to go with the legendary perks that boost your specials over the more specific ones, like Survival Shortcut for instance. Now this is not a loadout that does huge damage numbers to either of the endgame bosses, especially now with the One Wasteland update, but with the influx of newer players looking for advice on how to set up their build, this is definitely functional for more casual players without having to completely sacrifice convenience perks that make life much easier as a new player still learning the game. With Perception at 6, we're using the first rank of each commando card to provide for 30% additional damage without suffering the diminishing returns from higher ranks. Investing 9 perk points into maxing out all 3 commando cards is quite costly, especially for newer players who don't have a surplus of level ups to reallocate perk points as easily. This way, only using rank 1 of each commando, you receive half of the max damage boost at 30% for only 1/3 of the perk point cost. Ultimately, the bonus armor penetration and chance to stagger with rank 3 tank killer is a more cost-effective investment in perk points than maxing out all 3 commando cards. Tank Killer's stagger effect can be very useful, and it seems to trigger quite frequently at rank 3, especially with the 25% faster fire rate legendary effect. Ghouls can close in on you very quickly, so the extra few seconds when they are staggered can often give you enough time to reload, on top of the added armor penetration for extra damage. Alternatively, rank 3 of Concentrated Fire is another good option for bonus damage in VATS, and the option to target specific limbs. Either way, based on our testing here at Wasteland Watch News, we found that unless you are going all in on your perception stat to max out all the commando build cards, perception at 6 is more than enough to deal with high-level enemies. Now, it is possible to improve your ability to stay hidden from various sources. For example, the harder to detect effect on legendary armor provides 15% additional sneak rating per piece. Going back to our perk cards, you can see we do not have sneak maxed at rank 3, which would increase our sneak rating to 75%. Instead, I'm using 2 pieces of HTD armor with only rank 1 of the sneak perk card equipped, but that still gives us a very respectable 55% sneak rating. On top of that, the perk card Escape Artist makes you effectively silent when moving, and you can very easily lose enemies that have detected you by getting out of their line of sight and crouching. So, to sum all that up, using 2 HTD armor pieces, rank 1 of Sneak and Escape Artist, you can stay undetected quite easily for a low perk card investment. Now obviously this comes with the added challenge of acquiring HTD armor pieces to emulate this build, but it's definitely worth looking out for if this min-max approach to stealth suits your playstyle. So, while it's no longer guaranteed to one-shot enemies using stealth, as was the case before patch 23, the Instigating legendary effect is still a viable option for a stealthy approach, and despite this most recent and admittedly frustrating nerf, it is still possible to do a decent amount of damage when used correctly. This will suit players who enjoy quietly picking off targets one by one. And as you can see, when I'm able to stay undetected, I can easily take out these ghouls with 2 or 3 shots. Earlier I mentioned that the 25% faster fire rate and the Instigating effect are an interesting combination on high rate of fire automatic weapons, as it appears that sometimes more than just the initial shot receives the double damage boost. It doesn't seem to happen quite as often as before the recent patch, but as you can see by the ammo count, one pull of the trigger often causes 2 rounds to fire, and the damage numbers are identical. Let us know down in the comments if you found any other combination of legendary effects that can have unintended results. Thank you so much for joining us for the second episode of Wasteland Watch News. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and most importantly, show your support by subscribing to the channel. I'm your host, Donald Key. Thanks for watching.